So we're learning the final chapter of this mimer, chapter 32. And with this, we'll finish this mimer. And the next discourse we're learning is Basi Legani of the Rebbe, not of the previous Rebbe, of 1951. You can get it online. It's available online or in book form. Please get yourself that text or online and follow along. Basi Legani, B-A-S-I, Legani, L-E-G-A-N-I, from the Lubavitcher Rebbe from the year 1951. But now, Moshe, we're going to finish this mimer. And here the Rebbe, the Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, talks about the specialty of Torah learning. And he says, just as a brief introduction, Torah learning introduces us to truth. Truth is not an easy accomplishment because the world we live in and the influences on us many times leads us to not giving the full truth, etc. The specialty of the Torah is Torah's truth. So by learning the truth, you live with the truth, and when you live with the truth, you bring down the true God, the essence of God. Let's look inside chapter 32. Reb Hillel, welcome. Chapter 32. Last chapter. Vizehu Kodev Hashem, and this is what we say in Ashrei, Kodev Hashem, God is close to all those who call upon Him in truth. Sheyikreu now, calling to the very essence of God's, what we call delight and playfulness. Be'emes, the Torah, how do you call God? How do you reach the essence of God's delights? It is through the truth of Torah. V'hainu l'shma. This means to study Torah l'shma. And for a moment, Moshe, what does it mean to learn Torah l'shma? Not to be a rabbi, not to learn how to be a sofer, not to be a teacher. Those are all important things and acceptable things. But that's not l'shma, Hillel. L'shma means for the sake of Torah. Hashem gave us a Torah. That's it. Everything's there. He says, study it. The idea of the result of Torah is already not the purity of Torah. Do you hear that? It's very, very important. So when we talk about reaching the truth comes from just studying the Torah. Whether it'll give you a degree, it won't give you a degree, whether it'll make you feel good or it won't make you feel good, you're in the zone. The zone is Torah. But I don't feel the ambiance of the zone. Who cares? Who cares? God says learn Torah. And if you learn Torah, you're in. That's the truth. And this points to a very important point. When we do something, and we have much to do, and we don't feel it, right? So, or we don't feel that we can accomplish it, we give up. That means that your learning to begin with is not learning the truth. It's not pure. It has a condition to it. The story that I'll share is when I was studying with a doctor. He's already gone to the Olam Emes, very fine person, and we were learning Tanya. From the beginning, we went through from chapter 1 through chapter 12, and after chapter 12, he didn't come anymore. So I asked him, and he was a friend, and he was a supporter. I said, why did you stop? Why did you stop coming? And it was good learning. He says, I realized I'll never be a Beinani. The author, whose yahrzeit was yesterday, by the way, the Alter Rebbe's yahrzeit, teaches us that the ultimate is to be the average man who who doesn't do anything that's wrong, and doesn't speak anything that's improper, and pushes away all thoughts, that consciousness. He says, I understand that, but I'll never be that type of person. And by the way, he was a person who didn't speak much. He didn't gossip. He was more of a loner, and he was really a very fine person, head of a department. But he realized that the peak that the Alter Rebbe speaks about, being a Beinoni, he's not going to reach. So he said, why should I study this? Why should I study something that I can never attain? Now, there's truth to what he says, but it's wrong. It's wrong at the end, because you don't study Torah, you don't study Tanya so that you should be a Beinoni. If you study properly and you take it the right way, you either will or you won't. But not that to begin with, it's like, I want to be Hill's a social worker. So you go to Cornell, you go here. In other words, you have a condition and you have to go to this university or that university, which is fine. But that means there's an agenda. Pure Torah is agendaless. And that is why it's not the average and the norm to study Torah Lishma. You find me, in other words, let's say a Kollel guy who studies. Many of them study because they need funding. They need to fund their family. They like Torah, but there's a condition. It's called making bread and butter for your family, which is acceptable, but that's not Lishma. There was a big Rav, his name was Rabbi Yosef Eliyahu Henkin. His daughter is Rebbetzin Henkin in Yerushalayim, I believe, whose son and husband and son, I don't know if they were murdered, remember? In Efrat. I think they were, the Henkins. I think it was Efrat, or somewhere.
It was son and daughter-in-law.
Son and daughter-in-law, okay. So the Zayda, Rabbi Henkin, Rabbi Yosef, was a Goin. Was from Lithuania. He came over, I think, in the 1920s. And he made an organization, or he continued an organization called Ezras Torah, helping the Torah. And what was the foundation of this organization? To collect money and give money to people who sit and study Torah who wouldn't ordinarily ask for a salary. That was the modus operandi of this organization, Ezras Torah. Then later, with years, it changed. And I know someone who found records from the 20s and 30s of and he sent the money from America to Russia, to Israel, to Eretz Yisrael. And they kept a record of every Rav that got money. And very interesting, this person told me that it says on the list by one person that he returned the money when he came to America, that he was sent the money from Ezra's Torah in America. And that was Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. The only one on the list that it says that when he came to America, he sent back the money to Ezra's Torah for what they gave him while he was in Russia, was Rabbi Moshe. It's a very, very... it's a very important thing to know. If I didn't know this at the time when I wrote my book on the Rebbe, Reb Moshe, because I would have put it in. It just shows what kind of Jew he was. Anyway, so I'm pointing out to you that Torah learning is important, a gewaldig. But most Torah learning is not Lishma, okay? And don't be convinced it is, because it's not. The Rebbe Rashab says here that if you want to reach emes, l'chol asher yikra'u be'emes, Korav Hashem, God is close, l'chol asher yikra'u be'emes, to all those that call him with emes, ein emes el Torah. The meaning of emes here is Torah. So the Rashab says, what type of Torah are we talking about? Torah l'shma. For the sake of Torah, without any strings attached. Okay? Is that clear? That's how you have truth. Let's continue. L'shem haTorah, which Torah l'shmo means for the sake of Torah. Shehu rak lahamshich gilui oirei sof. Next page. B'oisis haTorah. It's to draw down the infinite God in the letters and words of Torah. Shezeu kol ikir inyan kavonas mitzvahs Talmud Torah. This is the entire purpose of the purpose of studying Torah. Who ayidei kriya shekoira v'shoyne b'teir shebal peh v'teir sheb'ksav, and that's by learning, reading in the Torah, in the written and in the oral Torah. Like Chazal say, whoever reads, Mark, and studies Torah, which refers to not just the written law, the 5 books of Moshe, but Torah Sheb'Ksav, the written law, but also Torah Sheb'al Peh, the oral Torah, the Talmud, the Jewish law, Hasidus, Musar, Kabbalah. Next page. When one sits and learns Torah, what we're doing now is we're learning Torah. Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look what it says. Hashem is learning Torah opposite us. Meaning, right now, God is learning because we're learning. Now the Baal Shem Tov it says God is your shade. Yoni, so the Baal Shem Tov has a beautiful taich. That a shade, how is a shade created? When you walk, you create shade. You walk this way, you create one shade. You walk this way, it's further, it's closer. So God is your shade. What does it mean God is your shade? That when you learn Torah, it's like a shade which is created by you. So when we learn Torah, we create God learning Torah. That's the shade. That's the idea. And it's written, Hakoil Kol Yaakov. The voice is the voice of Yaakov. Zeu Koil HaTorah. This is the voice, the sound of Torah. Right? With Yaakov and Esav, Yitzchak was blind. And he has his 2 kids in front of him. So he says, the sound is Yaakov, but the hands are Yedei Esav. The hands of Esau, who was a hunter and a killer. So specifically, Yaakov, the Jew, represents the voice of Torah. And he says, because in this sound that comes through the study, the words of Torah, we draw down God's infinity into supernal wisdom. The Torah, b'pchinas koil havaya. The Torah shel amayla, b'pchinas koil havaya. The heavenly Torah, the sound of God, shukayda v'shayna, who's learning opposite the person while the person's learning as well. Gam ke moise amokem voise alocha. It's not that Hashem now is learning Kabbalah Hillel. We're learning Chassidus and we're learning about this concept. God is learning the same idea now. Wow. Hashem, you're learning the same idea? Explain it to me better. But the point is, our learning now, this particular mimer, this particular page, right? We cause Hashem at this moment to learn the same topic. That's what it says here. So when you learn halacha, whatever that halacha is, Hashem is studying that halacha, metaphorically speaking, of course. V'ois halacha, next page. Kenegdo, shezeu islapshu seidisof. This is the meaning, it's the investment of the infinite Hashem, because the Torah, in the sound of Torah, just as the Torah was by Hashem, playfulness and delightful. This is the meaning, that we actually call with the truth of Torah. So when we study the Torah without any agenda, just because it's Hashem's holy Torah, that's when you're reaching and touching the truth. The truth, Hillel, has no agendas. If it has an agenda, it's not 100% true. It doesn't mean, by the way, it's bad. If you remember in chapter 13 of Tanya, there's Svas Emes, the border of truth. The second level, there's Emes, truth, and then there's Emes Lamita, the truth of truth. So there are gradations in truth. But the ultimate is the truth of truth.
But that's why it says Torah Emes, no?
Yeah, but
That's the whole reason for that.
Yes, yes. If you define Torah Emes like you say, Yoini, to refer to this level, absolutely. When one year I was in Meir Sharim over there, Simchas Torah, and I walked into the Mir Yeshiva. I wanted to see how they dance on Simchas Torah. My family was with me. A few of the kids, my wife. It was a very small crowd because everyone's home, or in America, or in Canada, or Australia, and the locals go home. But the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Finkel, at that time, he had a bad case of Parkinson's. He already passed on, right? It was a very small group, 20 people dancing around, and they were singing the song, Toiras Hashem Temima, Toiras Hashem Temima, na 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 na, and I think na 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 na, that song, and it was very, very what's the word, docile. It was very quiet. I thought I'm going to come in and see 500 people dancing. It's a Torah night. It was, compared to a Chabad or a Hasidic or a Karlbach Simchas Torah, it was night and day. But I'm not going to go there right now. But I remember that you sing that song, Torah Hashem Tamima, the Torah of Hashem is complete. And it says there, Emes, and you call it Hashem to Emes. So, Yoni, the words are in the song and in the verses. The question is, what do we mean by that? When you learn Chassidus, Yoni, you become aware that not always the word that you see or hear in the regular community is what Chassidus means. And it doesn't mean it's not true, it's just a different angle. Okay? So that's why I'm ambivalent to say to you that when you say Torah Emes, everyone's thinking this level of Torah Shema. I would venture to say absolutely not. That's not what they're thinking. They're thinking that if you learn in Torah and you steig in yeshiva, you'll become a great Rosh Hashiva, a great rabbi. That's one of the things that they convince or try to convince their students. And that's not what we're talking about. That's not emes. It's not bad. It's important, but it's not this level of emes. That's an agenda. You're learning Torah to be a great rabbi, to be a great Rosh Hashiva. Not talking about that. I'm learning Torah because it's the right thing to do. Whether I will gain or I won't gain, I will become famous or not famous, makes no difference. I hope you understand that. So therefore, you're right that when we say Torah Emes, we should think of this idea that he explains it here. But I would venture to say most people probably don't think it that way. They think of a Torah that is associated with a condition, string attached. What am I going to get from Torah? It was once a Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, so I was going to ask, is that the reason why that somebody that teaches in a yeshiva or is a mechanech or a rebbe, that it's not so pasha to just take a salary? Because of that? Meaning it has to be
yeah, the Rambam, very good point. Glad you brought that up. The Rambam writes about that. Yeah. There were Yidden that would refuse a salary, 100%. But, It's not forbidden. But yeah. Well, I mean, I told my wife, I came back from Montreal, one of the things I heard, someone came over to him, that he asked my father-in-law to come for bring. He came, he paid his own way, and the person came over to him and he said, I want to reimburse you for your ticket, and I want to pay a little bit for bringing, for coming. He wouldn't, he said, to bring? Absolutely not. He didn't, and he wouldn't even take money for the ticket. The guy had to force him to take money for the ticket. I mean, that's a Jew that's living with a higher reality. There's no question about it. And again, you could say that, from where he was, it's only him and his wife, and he was 75, 80 years old. You know what I'm saying? You can find reasons, but there is something to be said, that since you mentioned that Rambam, but today practically, everyone has expenses. It's so expensive to live and all that. So, but if you really want to climb the ladder, that is a level, what you just mentioned. The Rebbe, when people gave him, he never accepted gifts. Because the Gemara says, Soina matonis yichya, the one who hates gifts will live longer. What do you mean taking something for free? And so what they would do, they would work around him. They would give it into the office, to the merkez, a silver becher, a silver this, But the concept of, what do you mean, a gift? And that's one of the reasons the Rebbe went to work in the 1940s. Trust me, he could have been supported by the organization. It wasn't a wealthy organization. It was actually in very deep trouble in the 40s. But still, he didn't want to live off the community. What kind of business is this, living off the community? So here we're talking about the ultimate. Let's continue. By the way, just to say, the person who made the offer to pay my father-in-law did the right thing. In other words, you don't be the holy one on his shoulders. You let him decide whether he wants to take the fee or not. And I must say, I was treated, in Montreal, like with such achnosas orchim, in so many different ways. I never, I travel and speak, and I said this publicly during the Fabrengen, which is online now. I was blown away with the achnosas orchim, that the way they treated me, and they had a driver. Okay, it's snowy and they don't want me to fall, so they held me. You know what I'm saying? But just it's up to we have to offer, we have to provide, whether the person takes it or not. That's their cheshbon, not And I was once on a plane, the wife of a prominent Chabad rabbi, who's asked to speak and go around, and he doesn't like doing it. She says to me, she says, my husband comes off the plane, he's tired. They don't offer him normal food, and they don't offer him a place to rest until he comes after the Fabrengen. And she was, she was upset, but she, he's not going to say anything. She's not going to say anything, but it's not right. So when we talk about the concept of learning Torah with Shema, we're talking about our cheshbon, ourselves, to make the cheshbon. But when it's relevant to someone else, we don't make that cheshbon for them. We don't become their policeman and say, "Oh, you're a chassid. You want to be a beinoni. You're a gadol. You don't need to eat much. You can sleep on a regular seat and break your back, and I'll fly first class." I mean, yesterday I happened to see for a second a clip of a rabbi with people singing around him on a private jet. I mean, what's going on is really, it's like over the top. How many children?
It's a real chil Hashem. I saw what you're saying, and it's really a chil for goyim specifically to see this. It's one thing of Jewish people, but goyim to see this, it's a terrible chil Hashem.
Could be. I'm just thinking about this idea of, how much money you could give for tuition, for tzedakah, for people who don't have, and just and that the rabbi cooperates. I don't know what he's thinking. I really don't know what he's thinking. and he's making himself, what seems to me religious, looking inside the Gemara or the Sinner, and everyone is around him singing. I mean, it's like absurd. Now why do I say that? I don't want to get into that negativity. I say that when you talk about emes, it's like a chassid once said, it is so difficult to be emes. It is difficult because people get caught up in sheker, in babamaises, in lies, in fashion, in what's the word I'm looking for? Flashiness and all that.
Gashmias.
But there's gashmias and there's gashmias. A person needs to eat. The person needs to sleep. I mean, I came there. I said, put me up anywhere. I don't need a hotel. Just as long as I have a normal room and I could rest and I have a bathroom and I can, and what do I have to? I need a hotel. We have to know that first of all, it's other people. It's a person who's paying, for your expenses and all that. It's mom and hektish. It's coming from an organization. Now, understandably, what if they tell you we're going to put you up in a place that has, dirt and noise and this, and you have to go and lecture. I lectured 5 times yesterday. I spoke 5 times. And one day, Monday, you have to be rested. You have to be calm. So the person hosting and arranging needs to be cognizant of that. So I just want to bring out that nakuda. Let me just say another few things here. Let's continue. V'hainu l'shma l'shem ha'Torah. This means to learn l'shma l'shem ha'Torah shebekriya zu havaya k'ira mamshechatzu v'Torah. Through this calling, Hashem calls Himself in Torah through the delightful, essential playfulness of God. Next page. And this surely makes peace in the heavenly world. We've been learning about the Shem Hashem. This brings together the first 2 letters, which is Chochma Bina Sheyu Nikrayim Trein Rein Lemispashim, that they should be called 2 friends that don't separate themselves. B'tzimtzum v'Ispashtus v'Helen v'Gilu Kanal. They shouldn't be separated through the extraction and the expansion, the concealment and revelation, but rather go together. They should be measured based on the capacity of the worlds. This is the attribute of emes, liyes kolul mikol ahofchim, to incorporate all opposites, with a proper mixing, blending. She'osu emes, that's when you have emes, when everything comes together. Therefore, next page. Through Torah, Nasa is Chabrus, Nasa has Chabrus, the Helen, the Gilib, the Dafka, there becomes the joining and combining of concealment and revelation and the proper blending. What does it mean to join and connect? It means there shouldn't be opposites. Both should illuminate constantly. Two friends that don't separate. And it constantly is drawn from concealment to revelation. From the state of nothingness known as ayin to the state of yesh, which is the state of being. And one leads to the other. Like a well that constantly is flowing. From concealment to revelation, ultimately leading to a river and expansion. Next page. This is through the illumination of the Torah, which is called the scribe and the story. In a way of emes, shehu hamitzua. This is the blending michochma chesed ugvur of chesed v'kanal shezeu shikru be'emes the Torah dafka. This is the meaning that you call God with the emes of Torah. Kitzer, we learned synopsis. Yikru be'emes, call God with truth. L'mhusim atzmusei sof, to the essence of God. Be'emes the Torah, with the truth of Torah. And when you draw down the truth of God, there won't be opposites. Two friends that don't separate. The Rebbe Rashab writes, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, this is all I got from my father to copy and release. So it seems like there was more, but this is all what he gave. So it's interesting that he, in the beginning of the Maimer, he asked the questions about Midyan, that Midyan opposes the name of Yudke Vavke. He explained that at great length, and he spoke all about the idea of how sinas chinam, how baseless hatred is the root of all problems. And then he ends up with this idea of emes, and he doesn't really connect the end to the beginning. So just a thought briefly, and that is emes brings together everything. And since Midyan sought to bring divisiveness, differences between us, between people, and between God, etc. So the way to counter that is through the emes of Torah. That's the way I see the connection.
Is that one of the reasons why Midian and Moab are the two nations that are not allowed to join us?
No. This is not talking about Moab. It's talking about Midian, and he's not talking about.
No, but it's Moab and Midian, no? Oh no, it's Ammon. Ammon, you're right.
Ammon and Moab.
Right, sorry, mixed up.
Okay, tomorrow what I want to do is actually fabrang about the Alter Rebbe, since we missed it. I wasn't in Shir, and then Monday, please get yourself a hold of the Maimer Basi Lagani from the Rebbe, 1951. It's online, and it's also in this Sefer, if you happen to have it, Lessons in Maimorim. There are 5-6 Maimorim of the Rebbe in a volume called Lessons in Maimorim. And it's if you can get that, it would be great. But otherwise, even online, or you can find the Maimer Basi Lagani, 1951. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalvin, just a couple things in the back of the book here. It says a concluding manuscript, and then there's some letters. It's a brief amount. I'd be curious if are we gonna learn that? Is it possible we can learn that?
Let me see. Where is that? Where is that?
At the end. At the end of
at the end, it says brotherliness amongst Hasidim, a letter by the Rebbe Rayatz. That?
So in the volume that I have here, it says concluding manuscript, and it says the harmony between the Vav and the He of Hashem's name, Havaya.
I don't have it, sorry. I don't think
so maybe it's not in your volume.
I have it. I was going to ask the same question. All right, maybe you and I will have to learn.
How many pages is it? And maybe you can send it to me. I don't know.
Not long. It's a few pages. Not too long.
It's in Hebrew?
It's the same. It's the same.
The same form.
Hebrew English.
So you know what? If you could make a copy, send me, and then I'll look at it. I can't tell you right now. I have to look at it. I think I saw it once, and I think it is very esoteric.
I think the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, and that's why maybe didn't include it in this volume.
It doesn't look very esoteric.
Yeah?
It doesn't look like... it has Kabbalistic concepts, but not like gematria.
Okay, well, let me see it. Let me see it, and then I'll talk about it, okay? See everyone tomorrow. Mitzvah Shem Zayt Gesund. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thank you.